Ladies and gentlemen, I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is October 9th, 2022, and this is your daily Ukraine update. And we are going to be asking ourselves, is Putin finally trying to get control of his forces? And what does this mean for Ukraine? Let's get into it. So first off, when we take a look at the big old tactical map, we see that there actually hasn't been much change since the last update. We've seen Ukrainian forces make some marginal advances here in the south, seizing this small town of Novokamyanka, completely pushing the Russians back slightly. And then when we go over to the Severodonetsk, Lysychansk, Kharkiv front, we see that there's also been pretty minimal changes. A small advance pushing the Russians back here. Not even, there you go, at the village of Stelmakivka. And again, this is the Ukrainian advance continuing apace. As we've discussed, it's absolutely essential that they not let Russian forces entrench themselves, dig into new positions, and reestablish their supply lines. They want to continually be pressing them, but of course, Ukraine cannot press further than it can support its own troops. But what's really interesting, what I thought was the most interesting development, is actually here near Bakhmut. As we back it up a couple days, we can see that Zaitsev has been seized by the Russians. Now, is this some sort of portend of something greater? No, probably not. Russians have been seizing these marginal pieces of territory on and off for weeks. They've been trying to take even this mid-sized town of Bakhmut as an operational objective secondary to probably creating, they had hoped to create a cauldron to swallow up Seversk. But this strategy has to be put on the back burner because, as you guys can see, they don't control the northern flank of this cauldron. And this is emblematic of Russia's lack of strategy now, right? It only makes sense. You seize Bakhmut, you create this pocket that's surrounded by, a month and a half ago, this would have been Russian forces. And then you force the Ukrainians to withdraw, yielding a bunch of territory without a fight. But the fact that Russians are still advancing towards Bakhmut, ignoring the fact that the entire northern flank of their cauldron has been pushed back, is a testament to the fact that Russian forces just seem to be on sort of autopilot. It's not even clear that they are really repositioning in response to these changing realities on the ground. And this makes a lot of sense because we can see in the news today, one of the biggest stories is, of course, that Russia has named a new general to lead the Ukraine invasion. And of course, we're using ground news. This is an essential news source in any conflict involving Russia where misinformation abounds. If you want to check them out for free, my link is in the description and help support the channel. But as you guys can see, the Russian Defense Ministry has named General Sergei Surovikin as the commander of the joint grouping of forces in the areas of the special military operation. That's so very Soviet bureaucratese. I kind of love it. But he is actually an aerospace force commander, and he was originally the commander of Russian forces in Ukraine's southern axis. This referred to the forces that took Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. And it's sort of funny, talk about failing upwards. Yes, he took Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, successfully completing the encirclement, right, forcing Ukrainian forces to withdraw. But as you guys can see, since then, things have not gone well for him as a commander of the Southern Front. He's been pushed back from Bilohorivka. His forces are basically stuck on the outskirts of Lysychansk, very, very nearly unraveling most of his dramatic gains. His entire northern flank has been pushed back. So the fact that they've turned to someone who has had a significant, let's find it here, the fact that they've turned to someone who's had a significant failure operationally, and that's the best they can find, is a testament to the fact that Russia is probably running out of good options. As we've discussed, the Minister of Defense seems like he might be on the chopping block next. what's interesting is that when we scroll down, we can actually see, let's see if we can find it here. It's in the Institute for the Study of War, that the Wagner financier, Prigozhin, actually extravagantly praised the new general because he, quote, got into a tank and rushed to save the Soviet Union during the 1991 coup attempt in Moscow. This, of course, indicating that Prigozhin, this general is probably within his faction, his loyalty. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean they see eye to eye on war strategy? Does it mean this general's actually in a patronage network below Prigozhin? It's not clear. But this sort of public statement can be read as an endorsement that Prigozhin is at least perhaps functioning now as a kingmaker in terms of who is going to be commanding Ukrainian forces. Again, is there more? Undoubtedly, the Ministry of Defense is probably supportive of this guy, or at least stating supportive things about this guy. But the fact that this person who's not in the Ministry of Defense is making these statements, I think is an indicator that there is probably some sort of power struggle going on within the Kremlin in terms of who is going to be running this war. Anyway, guys, that is pretty much the update for today. I'm sorry. There's one other update that I think is important, is that after this Crimean explosion on this Crimean bridge, traffic has somewhat resumed over one lane. Let's see if we can find it. I think this is probably the best story here. Talk about the risk of Putin escalating the war high after Crimean bridge explosion. But what I think, and there's debate over how much of an impact this is going to have. And here's the thing. Just because, yes, there is, I think, one lane of traffic and the rail traffic continuing to operate. It would be preferable to see the bridge destroyed at a much greater scale, obviously. But even damaging this bridge severely and restricting traffic, we can again think of Russian forces in the south as needing continuous tons and tons of supplies coming into them. Think of it as your muscles needing oxygen when you exercise. If you were to try to exercise at the same rate, but instead of breathing through your mouth, you had to breathe through a straw, it would be a lot harder and you would very quickly exhaust yourself. This is what the Ukrainians are trying to do by cutting off these supplies. Remember, soldiers never stop needing to eat, drink, and get more ammo for their weapons, right? So if you can even a disruption will cause tremendous downstream effects in their supply system. Okay, that is all I had for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, of course, if you want to get access to combat video breakdowns that are YouTube has not, I cannot put on YouTube. You want to become a member of the Patreon. You guys know YouTube has been cracking down in various ways on Ukraine content creators generally and on my content specifically. So if you want to help me out, become a member of the Patreon. I'm on the road. I don't have the Patreon members list, but rest assured when I'm back, I will update it with all our new Lieutenant tier patron members. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you in the next one.